The love of God. I was in the system of Christianity for many years, carrying around guilt and condemnation, listening to all the teaching on sin. I was taught the fear of God, but I never fell into that trap of serving God out of fear. I had a real experience when I first met the Lord. I was so caught up in the love of God from the very beginning. I'll never forget, I wept for probably 2 or 3 days, not at first, because when I first accepted Jesus I was told that if you just get alone and ask Jesus to come into your heart, he'll come into you and change your life. I thought, man, that sounds wonderful. And so I did that. I went home and I knelt down in my bathroom and I said, Jesus, if this is true, if you can come into my life and change me, that is what I want. But nothing happened. I didn't experience anything at all. But about 3 days later, people began to ask me, Gary, what happened to you? You are different. I didn't realize it, but people around me did. They began to question me, and this was on the job, what happened to you? All of a sudden the light and the glory of God just filled me, right there as they were asking me these questions. I began to weep, right on the job. Right in that instant, I realized that it had really happened, that I had tapped into this unlimited love of a God who had no hatred, and no animosity. He didn't care how I had lived my life in the past. It made no difference to him. He just filled my consciousness with his love and his glory. I remember what the Apostle Paul said. He was a big shot in religion. He studied under the greatest men. He said, I was more earnestly zealous for the traditions of my fathers. I often shared that the Apostle Paul was no different than an Osama bin Laden. He had the same concepts of God that Osama bin Laden had, the same concepts, that God killed all of his enemies. We are given that concept from the Old Testament, and Christianity picked it up and continued the assassination of God's character. They have never understood the difference between the concept of a God who murders and kills his enemies and God who has unconditional love. Jesus was an absolute contradiction to what the Jews believed. And that is why they killed him. He said to them, I know what your scriptures say. They say, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, that is not my Father. My Father, he loves his enemies. He blesses them that curse him. He makes his rain to fall upon the just and the unjust. That is why they killed him, because he did not fit into the Jewish mindset of a God who was an ethnic cleanser. I often say to people, what is the difference between the Old Testament concept of God, and the extreme Muslims and the terrorists? What is the difference? You see, their mindset has never been changed. They've never had a revelation of the Father heart of God. And neither did the Jews. Even David himself, who was called in the New Testament, a man after God's own heart, even David himself never knew the Father heart of God, because David would continually pray for God to destroy his enemies, to consume them who come up against him. The scriptures say, David was a man after God's own heart. You can love God with all of your heart, and you can still be so screwed up from your religious traditions that you'll think that because you love God, and somebody comes against you, if you have that concept that God annihilates his enemies, you will do the same. They told people in the Old Testament times to go in and slaughter everything in sight, kill all the babies, kill every thigh withing. That is ethnic cleansing. That is why Jesus said, you guys, you really don't know my Father. You don't know him. You are serving him, you think, but see, you are serving him according to the traditions of the elder. And that is why Paul said, when it pleased God to reveal his Son in me, immediately, I conferred not with flesh and blood. What he said was, when God chose to reveal his Son in me, I didn't go to the Jewish fathers. I didn't confer with flesh and blood. The Spirit within will reveal all truth to you. Gary Sigler's website is sigler.org.